Are we ready for some piping hot tea?
I don't have a cup.
That isn't my fault.
Welcome back to the Bookcases.
We don't have an intro. My name is Taylor.
I'm Sten.
And today, happy 100 subscribers!
Woo!
103 subscribers. This is the 103 subscribers special. And yes, as I said, we are doing your bookish hot takes. And by your bookish hot takes, I mostly mean bookish hot takes from people who follow me on Tumblr. Thank you very much to everybody who submitted. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
So you have seen all these, yes?
Yes, I have seen all of these.
And you are more engaged in this space than I am. And
I
you
am
have deliberately kept me in the dark
Yes.
as to the takes.
I have collected these kind of into categories, and we're going to go through them together. We're going to react, we're going to commentate, and I think it would be fun if we also said how spicy we think it is. How hot of a take is it really? Because some of these I think are good conversation starters, but aren't necessarily like the hottest takes in the world. That being said, the first take on our list is perhaps the most controversial, certainly one of the hottest takes, because that's what a hot take is. It's controversial. This comes to us from NerdyVids1. Reading on a digital platform will always be inferior to having a physical book because paper smells nice.
See, up until the last point, I was like, hard disagree. But if like the smell of paper is specifically what you want, there is something to like the paper and glue smell of a mass market paperback.
I knew you were going to have such strong opinions, though, about the reading on a digital platform will be inferior because you love ebooks.
I love the reading experience of ebooks, but I love the physical experience of collecting.
Yes. I prefer reading physically when I can, but it is so convenient to be able to go back and forth between a physical book, a book on my phone, a book on a computer screen. If I can do audio also, if I have the audiobook and the ebook and a physical book all at the same time and can go between all three, that's great.
I really like it's because my wrists are garbage.
Yes.
I like having
You're not
especially
wearing your wrist brace.
For like big chunky books. I love having a lighter form factor. I love my e-reader. I love my Kobo. Also, I've gotten into this habit of like when I want to read physical, if I have a really nice book, I don't want to scuff it. I want to...
That is a amazing segue into from Gay Refrain. This might not be the goal, but I wholeheartedly believe that if you own a book, you are allowed to dog-ear the pages. My favorite books have oodles of them for me to mark my favorite spots. And I would like to bounce off of that in just a little bit broadly of like beating up your physical books, because some people, myself among them, when we have a physical book, we are trying very hard to like keep it nice. That being said, I also will write in books. I annotate books, I write in books, but I also I don't want the spine to crease. I'm not a spine breaker. I like hardcover books because you don't have to worry about the spine breaking. I do agree with Gay Refrain. You're allowed to dog-ear your own book, but some people get very upset about the very idea.
I think these two takes can like sort of be nested on the spiceometer. To me, I've gotten into this habit where if I really like a book, I want a hardcover for display, and I want a full-size paperback for when I actually read it, because I like the reading experience better of a full-size paperback versus a hardcover.
Which is why we have duplicate copies of all the Stormlight books.
But at the same time, with my full-size paperbacks, it's not that I don't try to treat them nicely. Honestly, I baby all of my things, my books, my video games, all of my stuffs. But I do kind of have more of a use it and abuse it policy when it comes to my full-size paperbacks. They are there to be used. They are there to be read, and they are there to be worn.
While I am a person who does want to keep my shelf very nice, and for me personally, part of that is not there being a million different creases on like a paperback spine and things like that. Some people, I think, are overly precious about it.
the spiceometer. Like,
Spiceometer,
let's say 1 to 5 on a scale of spiciness. Where are we rating these?
Like 5 is very spicy, 1 is not spicy at all?
Correct.
I think that books will always be superior physically is like a 4 to 4.5. I think a lot of people agree with that. A lot of people are physical book purists, but at the same time, e-readers are wildly popular and audiobooks are wildly popular, and those two things will, whether or not it's like agreed or disagreed, saying that one form is superior to another, I think will always be a spicy take. I wish You're Allowed to Do What You Want to Your Own Physical Books was a cooler take than it is. I wish it was a 1. Realistically, the way some people get, it's like a 2.5 to a 3. Like, it's like people get so mad. They get so mad. And then you have the inverse where people get really mad at people like me who don't want to break the spine on their paperback. I will do a whole video for you about how I annotate my books and how I write all over the page, but even on those books, I don't want there to be a line on the spine. I'm sorry. That's my preference.
It's Schrodinger's hot take.
Everybody needs to calm down. Now this is interesting. This is perhaps a spicy meatball. From Ribcage Teeth. Hot take. I think it's fine if you, like, skip a whole chapter and still say you liked the book. I think it's fine to skip a paragraph if you want. I've seen a few people claim that skipping around or skimming is like this incurious behavior, and it's as incurious as reading an AI summary, and it's just not.
That looks like bait.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna come in with the hello everybody, in case we've forgotten, I am asexual and I don't always want to read smut, but I still want to read a romance book, and so I will skim or skip the smut. That's not that weird. The reason why you're skipping a chapter or skimming a chapter is very personal to each person. Maybe the person wants the political story but doesn't want to read the beheading scene. Maybe they're skipping a chapter because of the content warnings. Maybe they just really hate a particular side character but love what the main characters are doing. The specific phrasing of this, I think it's fine to skip or skim parts of a book and still say you liked it. Yeah, I agree. I think that's totally fine and normal. And I think especially people saying that you can't ever skim or you're as bad as an AI user is a little like, come on everybody, calm down.
That is over the top.
Exactly.
The way this one has been framed specifically is putting it in an interesting position, because I agree with you in most respects there. To me, it's kind of like, there are some people I've seen when referring to, like, for Stormlight Book 1, who are like, yeah, I just skipped all the flashback chapters.
Oh, that's a problem. But that's a different, that's different. If we go too far down that road, we'll be here forever. But like...
But you see what that sounds like.
Exactly, yes.
In a different context.
It does. And that's why it's, for spiciness, I'm going to say that's like a 5. Because I think that there's so much nuance to the discussion where it's like, yeah, I like certain things. I think it's fine to say I skipped this part of the book but still really enjoyed it and you haven't lost a lot. Other times you maybe have lost a lot, but it's fine to still say you enjoyed it. Then you start to come into the concerning territory, though, of like, okay, you enjoyed it, but did you understand it? That depends on how much you skipped. And that snowballs into another discussion. So I think just for the sheer controversial elements of it, we have to give that one a 5.
I think this one is a bit of a spice minefield because, like, it needs to be deliberately interpreted.
Yes.
And if you follow one deliberate interpretation, you don't really hit any big spots. But occasionally there's like a couple of like hidden 5 mines that are just like,
This is Minesweeper, the take.
If we're being deliberate and giving it the most charitable possible take, that all those sections are a 2. But if we're going out of our way to step on every rake on the way to the end, if we're just sideshow bobbing this all the way to the other end of the minefield, then yeah, there's multiple 5s that we're going to experience before we get to the end.
Excellent comment. So all of those previous comments are what I had called the reading style comments. This next category is the fan fiction category. As both readers and writers both of fan fiction, I think we'll have a lot to say about this, but specifically fan fiction and how it relates to traditional publishing. From my dear friend Centrum Lumina, shout out to Lulu. Hot take: any fanfic that you can file the serial numbers off and publish as an original fiction book wasn't that good a fanfic to begin with.
That depends on how hard you're filing.
And full disclosure, Lulu and I and our friends have had long discussions about this topic. To keep it short, I think she has the potential to be very correct in the way that, like, the best fan fiction is so intrinsically tied to the source material that to cut that source material off creates huge structural problems. I am just stating purely here from what I've seen in reviews. Manacled to Alchemized needed more reworking because there's too much DNA in Alchemized that doesn't make sense if you don't know it's Harry Potter. And the thing is, it's like, Manacled is a good fan fiction because it's in conversation with its source material, and then that made Alchemized a weaker book because it didn't divorce itself enough. On the other hand, Ali Hazelwood, for instance, published Reylo fanfiction as contemporary romance. Now, the thing about that is the Reylo fanfiction she was publishing was coffee shop AU style fanfiction. It was women in STEM, not coffee shop, but like that type of thing. It's contemporary AU stuff. And I think that to say that Ali Hazelwood's fan fiction wasn't good fan fiction because it was so easily transferred to successful commercial publishing maybe delegitimizes the coffee shop AU genre just a little bit for my tastes. But at the same time, you could argue how much of, like, Kylo Ren and Rey are really, like, in that fan fiction if it was so easy to just change the names and have nothing be lost. That's where I think the conversation gets interesting.
One of my favorite JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fanfics is a mundane AU where everybody just lives in the same town together.
You've told me about this.
And it is one of those things that, like, hypothetically, because we have divorced all of the supernatural chicanery from JoJo, hypothetically, we could file the serial numbers off of it.
But going right on into my dear friend Rattling Run, hot take: some tropes are better in fanfiction because you already know the characters. Watching characters I already love fall for each other over and over again, I don't care how long it's been, that's often more interesting than watching new characters I barely care about fall in love. And they're talking about some contemporary romance tropes don't work for me in contemporary romance books because I don't care about these people and I prefer them in fanfic. But I think it can then also go to, would that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fic work as well if it was people you didn't already care about?
And the funny thing is, you could, like, argue both ways.
Exactly.
For both of
Which
these,
is why I have paired
takes.
them, not just because Remy and Lulu are both in my book club. Like, I've also paired them together because they're so thematically related.
So, when it comes to filing the serial numbers off, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's true.
Just because you do doesn't mean it will or won't turn out good. It really comes down to the ability of the author, because really what fan fiction ultimately is it is taking my action figures of my Blorbos and
mashing them
together. And if it's fun, it's fun.
Yeah. In terms of spiciness, I would say both of those are like a 3 to 4. I think there's some juice there. There's some meat there. But I think if you're in fanfic spaces, it's not the wildest thing to say.
I would say they're a bit of a wild card of spice. I think 3 is a good one for them.
And then, to transition us out of fan fiction, we have From Puppies Are Perfect. I hate when people say that first person is a fan fiction thing, as if there aren't tons of classics that also use first person.
to me that feels cold, but that's also one of those things that, like, I don't see enough other people talking about this specifically.
There are a lot of people who hate reading in first person, and they specifically do cite it feeling like fanficky or like YAE. And I agree with Puppies Are Perfect here. You're acting like Moby Dick isn't in first person when it is. You know, like you're acting like you can't do serious literature or serious like literary worth with first person. Have you read The Hunger Games? Like, it's like first person is fine. It can be done badly, but so can third person. Let's not act like all third person is like great art. It's not.
I think.
Let's also not act like all fan fiction is low art. It's not.
And I think that's a pretty based take. I think that anyone who tries to say that any specific style of writing has to have a specific quality ascribed to it is usually in the wrong.
And I would love to use that style of writing bit as a segue into our next category, which I have labeled Romantasy / Booktok. Rainy Weather Supremacy says, I don't care if a book sucks if the 7'9" generic werewolf romance smut that a random TikTok user thinks should have never been published is what got a random person back into reading, then it is doing a service and must not be mocked. Also, I love Y/N, and as funny as the dunks on it are, I will never actually hate the X-reader genre. Protect self-indulgent art. And that's the segue. First person into Y/N. This is very funny to say as someone who has written, like, in space with Markiplier fanfiction, but I don't like Y/N or X-reader personally. But I respect it. I absolutely respect it. It's just not my taste. Again,
this is a take
in space with Markiplier fanfiction notwithstanding. Anyway.
This is a take that emotionally I feel like it should be cold.
I know,
but
right?
I know that practically it's about a topic that a lot of people are very...
It's like a 3.5 or 4. Like,
people are emotionally invested in the amount of ire that they hold for the romantasy genre.
Mm-hmm. Or for the monster romance genre. Really what I think a lot of people don't like them being published. And we'll get into that with another take here, but it's like somebody who would never call out someone for reading only fics on AO3 marked explicit or mature, but would call out that same person for only reading sentient object romance books. It's like, what's the difference? A publishing contract. Sometimes not even that. Those books are self-published. Like, that's the thing. It's like, there's not that big of a difference.
I think what it comes down to is that last part, which is the self-indulgence of it.
Mm-hmm. God forbid women enjoy things.
Like, I'm not gonna say it is our Western puritanical roots.
It is, though.
But it kind of is.
It is our Western puritanical roots.
It's this attitude of, like, it's that plus the idea that it's cringe to enjoy things, unless it's one of the things which I enjoy, which is based.
That's really where it is. It's like, where do you draw the line? At my own personal taste. Next question. Like, that's the hypocrisy of it all.
The hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy. How dare you? We have come to the username that I'm going to have to censor and post. I apologize, I love this username, but the Andy says, the current age of internet self-publishing has given too much legitimacy to stories that get to be published through physical media publishing houses. Most of these Booktok stories would most likely have been pulps before 2010, which isn't to besmirch them. Pulps serve an important role in the literary sphere. That's where the comment ends. If I might do some interpretation, I believe what they're saying here is that because pulps can be self-published now, we have in our heads this idea that anything that gets published through a traditional house should be better than a pulp. When pulps do still exist.
Yeah.
Like, Harlequin is pumping those out, but, like, you know, we're living in the era where we're starting to lose the mass market paperback and all that types of stuff. And, like, pulps are a slowly dying breed in terms of physical production. And I think that's what this person is getting at, is like, if I'm interpreting this right, I get where they're coming from. And I think it's really interesting. I would love to honestly, like, have this person write like a whole 5-paragraph essay about this. Essay on my desk by Monday. Andy.
This take is one that it's one that I feel like shouldn't be hot, but it is.
Yeah.
It's got big, why are you booing me? I'm right energy.
Yeah, and because, like, that's the thing, like, there's this other idea sometimes, too, that every, like, self-published book is just, like, pulpy or bad, when no. But at the same time, a lot of pulpy / bad stories just get put out on Kindle Unlimited, which then makes some people be like, why is this traditionally published thing so pulpy? And it's like, well, that's... Because the thing is imprints. Imprints. You gotta look at the imprint that you're working with. And it's like, why is this imprint putting out so many low-rent Romantasy books? Well, it's Red Tower. It's the low-rent Romantasy imprint. What were you expecting?
I think it really is an insightful take, but it's the kind of insight that a lot of people would not want to hear, specifically because it interferes with, the joy of hating on the thing that other people like. Mm-hmm. Which is really, at the end of the day, what we're all here for.
True. So... My dear mutual, I Can Kazoo, sent me 4 different takes. I'm going to combine 2 of them into one. Because you said, my slightly warm take is that protagonists should be allowed to be bad people and make bad choices and lose and have actual consequences for their actions. That sounds like a very cold take. Unfortunately, on Tumblr.com, that is sometimes a hot take in fandom. And then bouncing off of that... Most morally gray Romantasy characters are not actually morally gray. They're either doing bad things and internally justifying it, or doing good things and being morally conflicted about it for no reason. Other genres have a higher chance of actual moral grayness, but other genres aren't using it as a main selling point to the extent that Romantasy does. And I'm nesting these 2 together because, like... Online fandom loves to say that they love a morally gray character. They love to say that they love their shadow daddies. But then at the same time, they get really upset when characters are messy, especially if those characters are not white or if they're women. But, like, they love to, put their certain blorbos up on these perfect little pedestals who can do no wrong and don't worry about the war crimes. But then turn around and be like, I love my morally gray shadow daddy. And, like, the morally gray thing he did was fight capitalism. And it's like, no, that's just like a good thing to do. And I can't comment on this super, super well because I haven't read a ton of Romantasy.
Same.
But I get being frustrated by being billed on something being morally gray and then receiving the love interest from assistant to the villain.
It strikes me...
Who is not morally gray.
It strikes me as a confusion of aesthetic for substance.
Yes, and which is, by the way, assistant to the villain's problem. I swear this channel is not just an assistant to the villain hate channel.
What did I just say, Taylor? What are we all here for?
Both of those takes should be so much colder than they are, but again, they're on Tumblr.com, which I, as someone who has been living there for 10 years, an unfortunately warm take.
I think there's a lot of
like
young people who are still developing media literacy, and there are also some people who are just kind of, like, in a state of arrested development when it comes to their media literacy.
On Tumblr.com.
You don't need to, like, be a cultured reader. You can just read the things you like.
You can.
And you can enjoy them.
That's fine.
I think it's good to know why you enjoy things, but I also understand that that's work, and a lot of people are busy because we live in a capitalist hellscape.
I love you saying that.
Find the joy where we can.
I love you saying that because I screenshotted a comment on a take that we will get to in the future about exploring books that you might not think you'd like. Kitty Andy comes in and says, and knowing why you dislike something is important. And that's the same thing as knowing why you like something. Like, understanding your own media taste is very important, and, like, broadening those horizons to better understand your media taste. That you'll just have a better time with media once you do that, really. I do have one more take from Centrum Lumina about Romantasy. Hot take. Romantasy is way more a romance subgenre than it is a fantasy subgenre.
That is an interesting one.
I think, and this is the problem, that depends on the Romantasy.
It does.
And that is why some people make distinctions between Romantasy and fantasy romance. and romantic fantasy. Romantic fantasy and fantasy romance are two different things. Usually when people say romantasy, they mean fantasy romance, aka a romance book that follows a romance book structure taking place in a fantasy world. Something like One Dark Window or A Fate Inked in Blood. Versus a romantic fantasy, a fantasy book where there is a strong romantic subplot tied into the plot, aka Warbreaker or Jasmine Throne.
So here's my theory, and this is kind of like connected to like a YouTube comment I was reading you last night, but it is also an idea I've had for a while. I think that the genre most akin to romantasy is progression fantasy.
AKA lit RPG.
Yeah. Specifically like the progression fantasy sort of isekai type of books. A lot of romantasy books, at least the ones I've seen, have a plot where heroine girl gets sort of whisked away into not necessarily literally another world, but just like another strata of their world. They're taken into something entirely different. And there's this kind of fantasy of it. It's the same sort of fantasy as like Dragon Ball Z tells me if I learn to punch a tree hard enough, I can fly.
Okay. No, I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying. But Lulu is arguing romantasy is not a fantasy subgenre, that it is a romance subgenre. I think it's both. Like, not to be, wishy-washy, but I do genuinely think it's both. I would not be upset about finding a romantasy book in the fantasy section, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see it in a romance section. And I do also think the problem with romantasy as a subgenre is some books get real close onto that line. And the thing is, a lot of people just end up drawing the line of what is romantasy and what is fantasy with romance where their personal preference lies. And anything they do like is fantasy with romance, and anything they don't like is romantasy. And it reeks of the sexism of it all, of the besmirching of romantasy as a valid form of literature.
To me, what it comes down to is genres are fake. We made them up. And
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. Writing feeds the dark stones. My hot take is that people don't know what genres are, and it's messing up their reading experience severely.
That's 100% true. Genres are not real. They're marketing terms. They're categorizations that help us as humans with flesh brains.
Yes, and I love the example that they give is that fantasy is not a genre. If you grab a fantasy book expecting The Hobbit, you'll be very unpleasantly surprised when it turns out it's a Song of Ice and Fire.
I think that when it comes to romantasy, there are books which are fantasy romances that have a strong focus on the romance that don't necessarily appeal directly to the romantasy crowd. Really, genres just exist to categorize. And to me, what makes a romantasy is not just a fantasy setting with a romance that's being focused on. It is the nature of the romance. It's kind of the fantastical sides of the romance. The fact that, like, people might say, oh, I wish I could have my whatever the heck guy's name in ACOTAR is. There are people who might, like, say that, but also, like, know in their heart of hearts, yeah, I would rather have someone much more boring to be my forever partner.
Fiction versus reality.
That's another take that's, like, if you drop it in the right place, it could be pretty hot.
I think the example that they gave, and here's the thing, I agree with them, but I would never phrase it as bluntly as they did. Fantasy is not a genre. Oh, if you said that on Reddit, people would be so mad at you. Like, that's spicy. But their example, if you read The Hobbit and were like, great, I want more fantasy, and then picked up A Song of Ice and Fire, whoa. And that gets into, like, the thing is that's why subcategorizations and subgenres are important. Do you want a fantasy romance? Do you want a high fantasy, a urban fantasy, a political fantasy? There's so many kinds of different genres, and every genre is like that. You like romance? Great. Do you want, like, mafia romance? Do you want contemporary workplace romance? Do you want brother's best friend? Do you want age gap? Do you want, like, problematic dark romance? Do you want fluffy cute high school romance? You can't just say I want romance. That's too broad. And that's why the individual, like, marketing and labels and everything are important to find out what you actually are looking for.
Right. They are a tool both for marketers and for readers who are trying to communicate to each other their own recommendations. And that's fine.
Yeah. Speaking of marketing, Alexandria the Pretty Good, which might be my favorite username of the day. Alexandria the Pretty Good says, hot take, listing tropes, identities, and representations that are present in a book like you're checking them off a list is not a valid way of marketing. Give me a summary of what the book is actually about, goddammit. And it points to a deeper trend of treating books like items made specifically to be sold and not valid forms of art and creativity.
I think there are...
And here's the thing, let me point this out to you. This is not a cold take, because so much marketing is done that way, but it's a very common take, because we're all kind of sick of getting a list of tropes and no summary. Like, so many book ads are just like, here's a list of tropes, here's a list of represented identities, go. And it's like, wait, what's it about, though?
Well, it's like, this works on Archive of Our Own. Really what it comes down to is when you use that for marketing, you're just, like... And technically all marketing is just saying words, but you're extra just saying words here.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, again, I don't think it's a cold take, but I think it's an unfortunately common one. The only reason it isn't cold is because they keep doing it. Like, book influencers and publishers and writers, like indie writers, keep marketing this way, even though so many people I see be like, okay, but, like, what's it about?
That would be fascinating to try to figure out, like,
because the thing
sort
is,
of which came first, the chicken or the egg?
It is
were
also...
book influencers doing that first?
Or authors.
Or were publishers?
Because the thing is, it is also effective, especially for indie authors. It is effective to pull in your audience to be like, hey...
There are audience members who know exactly what they want.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think the thing is it can be an effective part of a marketing strategy, but it should not be your only marketing
And if you tell them, I have a sapphic romance with a slow burn enemies to lovers high in fiber, they'll go for that.
But is there a knife to the throat scene?
It's DLC, but...
And our last take in kind of the publishing realm of takes comes to us from Atomic Green Dragon. Lukewarm take, in their own words, spicy books are considered tame to some because publishers have already censored literature. We need more archaic works to push back against more constrictive censorship. People need to learn not everything is for them. To me, this is like witnessing, like, a shark fin go by in the water, like, over there. It's like, I don't swim over there, but, like, I'm concerned now. Because, again, I don't read a lot of spicy books personally, just not my taste. This, to me, is implying that a lot of people are trying to find spicy books and finding them to be disappointing compared to the spice that they can get on AO3 or Wattpad or fanfic.net or something like that because of publishing houses censoring.
So I think that this is one I would love to have gotten more elaboration on.
I know.
Because
Comment on this video, Atomic Green Dragon. Please explain to me why you're saying this, because this sounds fascinating and I would like to know more.
I think in the spaces I see it, at least, spiciness is kind of wielded in this way of, like, not quite smut, not quite pornographic, but, like, you know.
It's the same thing as
Titillating.
romantasy. Honestly, it comes down to personal taste, preference, and tolerance level. Like, and this person is specifically talking about, like, expecting a spicy book and getting something they consider tame. And I think what they're getting at is, like, publishers being conservative, which, like, happens. Like, marketers are using the word spicy now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're using it.
It's a bizarre situation. Again, would love to hear more from the OP.
Yes.
Just as to what it is that they're referring to.
This next section is called Hubby Needs to Diversify. So these comments they all have to do with diversifying your reading. And that can mean a couple of different things. We'll get into the different things that means. I posted a book haul on TikTok once, and I was like, these are the things that I got, and these are the things my partner got. And I got a comment from someone saying, hubby needs to diversify. First of all, I hate the word hubby. You'll never catch me using it. Second of all, nobody asked you. First off here from my dear mutual Mango Maestro. Hello, Mango. Everyone should read more books they think they wouldn't like. So many people would have more reading comprehension and also might find new favorites in places they didn't think to look. Some of the best books I've ever read have been entirely random or very unrelatable to me. This is the comment that Faggoty Andy replied to with, and it's also very important to understand why you think you won't like something before you read it and to challenge that feeling.
And I think that is a take which is one of those things where, like, if you had a good English teacher growing up, they were basically doing that for you, helping you branch out and
read Pride and Prejudice.
Read things that you wouldn't pick up on your own.
Yeah.
You know? And I think there's something really valuable in doing that. The best way to do this, in my opinion, is to be in a book club with people who have diverse tastes.
Yes.
Because
or to branch outside of, like, the genres that you usually read in. Because, and I had forgotten I wanted to combine these, another comment in this vein from the Optimistic Violinist. Hot take, nonfiction books are really good, actually. And it's good to try different genres than your normal ones. You may even find a new favorite.
I have a whole stack of, like, really fascinating nonfiction books that I have been meaning to get into. Because there's so many great authors who will
communicate very effectively, and with beautiful writing, you can learn so much. Nonfiction can be really effective and really interesting, and I think people should read it. At the same time, there are a lot of people who only read nonfiction who get very snobby about people reading fiction, and it's like, no, shut up. Diversify your reading. Read both are good.
Hubby needs to diversify. But ultimately, I think that a nonfiction book is not just its subject matter, it is also the storytelling acumen of its author.
Yes.
Next take.
Moving on from that, kind of jumping off of, like, reading diversely and choosing new books from different perspectives that you're not used to, from Kindness is Still Here. Hot take. Lecturing people on how they view the world does not encourage reading broadly. If all the recommended books then offered are all the same. True story of how a module of my degree went. Would have gotten into reading more diverse authors a lot sooner if the module meant for it actually to include diverse stories and genres. And this is so true, and specifically in the world of academia and, like, English degrees, a lot of English professors and writing professors are really, really, like, snobby towards genre fiction. And, like, reading diversely, I think, can and should mean everything from reading from authors who don't look like you, who have different life experiences than you, to reading outside genres that you typically read. So if you are a big fantasy reader and you've read a lot of white man fantasy, diversifying your reading, I think, both means try reading some fantasy books by women or by people of color. And also, try reading some not fantasy books. I think both of those count as diversifying your reading. And the thing is, a lot of the times, as much as I do think it's very, very important, a lot of the times somebody will be like, you should diversify your reading. And then everything they recommend is all like one kind of book from a diverse list of authors. Now that's very valuable as a rec list for this genre, but part of the problem can also be not branching outside of certain genres. And it's like, what about a sci-fi written by a woman? Or a historical fiction written by an indigenous woman? Like, there's so much more to diversify your reading than just like, read more books by X.
And I think there is something to that. There's only so much time that people have to put into what is not their job, what is a hobby for most people.
For sure.
And at the same time, I still think it's worthwhile.
It is.
To make sure that you're just kind of diversifying your media diet.
Kind of jumping off a more niche example of that, again from I Ken Kazoo, books should have more Orthodox Jews in them. If your book can have a character in hijab, you can have a character who's Shomer Torah U'mitzvahs, aka keeps Torah, is Orthodox. And like, yeah, exactly. Sure. Like, there's so many, and I think this, and they probably know more about this than me, but like a lot of the times you'll be looking for a specific kind of representation and you'll get it, but then you'll only get that one kind, you know? It's not just one thing. It's not just read more of X. It's like, okay, it's not just read books with Jewish people in them. Read more than one type of Jewish story. Read more than one type of Black story. Read more than one type of representation for one type of person.
What it comes back to for me, Rogue One is a movie that I am like not huge on. Like, you know my thoughts on Star Wars Rogue One.
Looking to see where you're going with this.
I remember, because this was at a time where like I was like, well, I feel like it's kind of overhyped. And a couple of my friends of just differing backgrounds, I remember seeing just how hyped they were to see someone in a Star Wars movie who looked like them as a main character. And that kind of drove home for me, oh, that's why this is important.
One more take to close off our diversify your reading section, again from I Can Kazoo, and this is interesting. They call this a lukewarm take. I find it quite spicy, actually. If you want to say something bad about a book, you have to read it first. Every book I hate, I've read in its entirety, and if I haven't read a book, the most I can say is, I don't think I will like this. And I think we're looking at two different scenarios here. I don't rate DNFs. We talked about this in our rating scale video. I think that to give a book you didn't finish a rating is not a whole picture, because to me, a star rating is after getting the whole picture. I don't think you need to finish a book, though, to say, I didn't like it. These are the reasons why. If I were going to rate it, it would be this. How much, I'm genuinely asking you, how much of the book do you have to read for you to be valid in saying it's bad?
So this takes me back to, like, again, to the rating discussion, because I do think there is something to this point of people who complain about things when they just legitimately don't have a horse in the race. They just want to complain about stuff, or they just don't like that women do be enjoying things. And at the same time, because where my brain goes, it goes to like the works of L. Ron Hubbard again, and just being like, there are things you can hate
without
about
experiencing
a book
them.
without experiencing them. And it's not even necessarily that like you need to like watch someone else subject themselves to it, but you can like know enough about something, even from just a moral level, to know, yeah, actually this is like not worth like any love or adulation.
Which honestly, I love taking that as a jumping off point to go into our final category of hot takes, which I have dubbed highly specific gripes. These were all such individual experiences that they can't be categorized. They are extremely personal to whoever wrote them. But the first one is once again from Rattling Run, my friend Remy. Because I'm always a hater, people need to stop recommending TJ Klune as the best queer fantasy author. I'm tired! Free me! And the thing about TJ Klune is one of his books is highly problematic due to its influence and inspiration. And there are a lot of people who have not read it, or who read it and enjoyed it and then found out about it afterwards, who then turn around and go, I don't like that. I have not read The House on the Cerulean Sea. I probably will not. Because what do you mean you used the 60s scoop as the inspiration for your cozy queer fantasy? I don't need to read that to say I think that's bad and I don't want to support it. But then from there, we can jump on to an interesting discussion about authors and culpability and problematic behavior, etc., etc., etc. And I don't know if we necessarily have time to talk entirely about problematic authors and all that type of stuff. That's its own video topic. I will say, though, Remy specifically is saying, I'm tired of seeing TJ Klune always at the top of the list when being recommended queer fantasy. And yes, I agree. Not even necessarily because of House of the Cerulean Sea, although that's a big part of it, but also like TJ Klune is a very specific kind of queer fantasy writer. And if that's your only queer fantasy, hubby needs to diversify. Read The Jasmine Throne, read Samantha Shannon, read Tamsin Muir. There's so much queer fantasy out there. You do not need to limit yourself to TJ Klune. It's like saying that Andy Weir is the peak of sci-fi. You're not wrong in saying that it's good, but like peak? Really? Peak?
I think there is something very, I think, just correct about wanting to save someone from a disappointing experience. That experience being reading a book that you loved and then having it retroactively ruined for you.
Thank you, J.K. Rowling.
It's just one of those things where I look at it, and there are times where the author has this ability to attach baggage to their work in a really fascinating and sometimes frustrating way. So I think this is an admirable take.
Yes.
Good on you.
Remy's got good takes. We love Remy. I'll see you at book club tomorrow. Another dear mutual of mine, Cats with Blogs. Shout out Cats. My hot take is that I will not read a book if the blurb makes any reference to romance in the slightest. I'm good if it's there, but I don't want it to be something the story is centered around. This, and if the cover of the book is ugly, I'm not bothering. If your creative decisions led you to an ugly cover, I don't think I'm gonna like your writing decisions. Well, I love that. That's so funny.
That first part, more power to you. You
Matter of
what
taste.
You like, you know what you don't like. Excellent. The second part, the author does not always get to control what is on the cover.
Yeah, that depends highly on the author. A lot of the times you get no control over that, especially if you're a debut.
Sometimes your publisher just sucks.
Yeah, sometimes they just make bad choices. From Namash Kawazi, hot take. There should be a limit on the number of books someone is allowed to mainstream publish in their lifetime. Like, at some point, you've got to move over and make room. Cough, cough, James Patterson.
I mean,
I went on a very long rant about James Patterson yesterday. Here's the thing. I love the spirit of this, and I hate James Patterson. I do disagree, though.
I think this take is appreciated in its spirit, but I think it misidentifies a symptom.
Yes, of the problem.
The James Patterson disease.
The problem is commodification of author as a brand over creative spirit. So, like, you could have a long conversation about publishing trends and corporatization of publishing and individual as brand and all of that stuff. And I sure would love to stop putting so many James Patterson on my P shelves over in the library, especially since Anne Perry is right after that. And then Karen Slaughter is right after that. And then Danielle Steele is right after that. The whole section is a mess. But the solution is not to stop allowing James Patterson to publish books. And then our final take. A take so specific that it made me create this category of take in the first place. From Olivia Ivy. Hot take. Lights Out is not good. I got so frustrated at how stupid the FMC was that I DNF'd. This man is stalking her, and she's into it. And then he carjacks her, and she stabs his hand. Then she apologizes to him, and willingly takes him back to her house to stitch him up. At that point, I was rooting for her to be murdered. I've seen white girls in horror movies make better choices, and I know the guy's perspective shows that he's not actually planning on murdering her or worse, but she doesn't know that.
I haven't read this book.
I haven't either.
I don't know about this book.
I do know about this book, though. And here's the thing. Lights Out, and this is why I didn't just scrap this comment, because this is something we've talked about.
I respect the hustle.
I do as well. However, we were talking about this earlier. Lights Out is a comedically toned dark romance. And what were we talking about dark romance before when the camera wasn't on? My hot take is that too many people read dark romance and then get upset when what they find is dark romance. I'm so sorry, Olivia Ivy. No shade to you. I respect the hustle as well. Like, you go hating on that book. You didn't like it. Fair enough. That doesn't mean it wasn't a good comedic dark romance, though. It just means that you didn't like a comedically toned dark romance.
All that said, what I'm gathering here is that this one is a dead dove, do not eat situation.
Lights Out is dead dove, do not eat. It is a stalker dark romance, and you know that going in. It's on the blurb. It is also comedic in tone, again, like Butcher and Blackbird, which is a serial killer dark romance between two serial killers. Listen, I will watch a video watching a more popular booktuber than us, like, tear apart a dark romance book for being ridiculous and for all of the problematic behavioral elements that are there, because I find that entertaining. I do find it a little facetious, though, when people are like, and those books are bad and should not exist. The dark romance community is a deep well of discourse that I don't want to get into. But, like, surface level, let's give these people some credit. They're adults. They know what they're doing. Anyway, all that to say, I think it's very fair and valid for you, Olivia Ivy, to say that I thought that Lights Out was bad. I don't think it's fair to say that Lights Out is objectively bad. I think Lights Out, having not read it, so I can't say whether it's good or bad, I think from all the reviews of it that I have seen, the people who wanted it to do the things it does think it did them well. And you just didn't like those things. And that's fair. Don't read any more from that author then. And now you've learned. Now we've learned.
We've learned. And isn't that half the battle?
No, knowing is half the battle. Learning is a quarter of the battle to get to knowing.
Okay.
So you guys had some good takes. I would say I don't think that you can necessarily rate those individual takes on spiciness. They're just too specific to that individual. But I still very much enjoyed them. Thank you to everybody who sent in a comment. If you would like to see something like this again in the future, make sure that you click the YouTube buttons down below. They do YouTube things like tell you when we post something in our community tab to then comment on. Shout out to NerdyVids1, who is the only person who commented on the YouTube community post. Everybody else came from Tumblr. If you came here from Tumblr, welcome. Perhaps stick around. Perhaps click the YouTube buttons so that you can join our YouTube family.
The buttons.
They're down there. They do YouTube things. This was a lot of fun. Thank you all for 100 subscribers. My name has been Taylor.
I'm Sten.
And thank you so much for watching the bookcases.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. My tea is gone. No more hot tea for me.